Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this group, Timeline Transformation. Now, this is going to be a little bit more of an adult conversation we're going to have here. So if you have differences of opinion with me, that's fine. I'm just sharing my personal beliefs on certain things, and I'm not coming from a religious standpoint. I'm just coming from a brain science and coaching perspective and my own personal experience. So if this offends you, we can take this offline and we can talk about it, but I'm just going to be sharing from my experience. Now, you may have heard this quote and you might have even seen this meme that's been kind of going viral recently. And it says, porn isn't real sex, cocaine isn't real energy, alcohol isn't real courage, gambling isn't real investing, video games aren't real life, caffeine isn't real adrenaline, nightly news aren't real facts, social media isn't real life, business books aren't real business. So the topic we're going to cover today is going to be around addiction. Now, a lot of you may have experiences with addiction. Maybe it's something as little as sugar addiction, or maybe it's like an addiction with coffee, or maybe it's an addiction with some unhealthy foods. Maybe it's ice cream. For others, it might be cigarettes. For some, it might be pornography. For some, it might be sex addiction. For some, it might be alcohol. For some, it might be drugs. It might be gambling addiction. So regardless of what you are experiencing, you have to understand also how the brain works and how you can get control back in your life. Now, if you are going through this, just remember that there is always help through any of these situations. I mean, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to point you in the right direction or point you to a group that might be able to help. But when we think about addictions and healing addictions, breaking addictions, what we have to understand is that the mind is trying to escape. The mind is trying to escape. So there's some sort of deep-seated pain, some sort of deep-seated trauma, some sort of deep-seated hurt that the mind is trying to escape. It does not want to endure. It does not want to face. It does not want to confront. And instead, it might be seeking out some instant gratification instead. So earlier, you may have seen some posts from me in the past week or so where, I was really calling out on one of my stories about pornography and pornography addiction. It's getting out of control in today's era. It's available on phones. It's available on tablets. It's available anywhere and everywhere you look. It's just everywhere. It's abundant to those that are looking for it. Now, this was something I struggled with myself, and I struggled with it for a long time because I got exposed to it at a very young age, at probably the age of 5 or 6. Now, when I got exposed to it, I didn't know what I was looking at. It was all on a computer, and I didn't know what the long-term effects would be. One door can open another door, can open another door, can open another door. And you have to be very, very mindful of what those doors are opening. So I want to just pause it for you all for a moment. Just consider, and I know this might sound a little crazy, but just consider, even if you don't think of yourself as having photographic memory, consider for a moment that you do have photographic memory. Now, what I'm trying to convey is that your mind is capable of remembering anything and everything within the subconscious. So, even memories within the mother's womb, memories from before you were 2 years old, memories that get blocked out. All of these are within the mind, right? This is all within the mind. And whether you like to think of yourself as having photographic memory or not, you do. And the other thing that we also want to remember is that trapped emotions can actually get stored within the body. So if you are holding on to trauma, it can actually get stored within the body. And they can also get activated. In psychology, they call this the study with Pavlov's dogs. It was a whole experiment where Pavlov, this scientist, was able to condition a set of dogs to the sound of a bell so that they would salivate on command. Now, if initially they introduced a stimulus of some steak, and then they would ring a bell, and then the dogs would salivate on the sight and the smell and the aroma of the stimulus, which was the steaks. Now, little by little, this coupled experience of a steak being presented, the aroma manifesting itself, the sight of the steak, and the bell chime were all linked. This is what we call anchoring, right? We've talked about this in previous videos. Now, what happens when you remove part of the stimulus, but you still keep another part of the stimulus there? So that's what Pavlov did. He removed the steak and he kept the chimes there. Now, when the chime was there, it would actually cause the dogs to salivate over time because they had been conditioned, right? This is called classical conditioning. Now, we go through this all the time. Maybe you're not paying attention to it. You might be wondering, what are you talking about, Manoj? But this is real. So notice how Netflix, it has like a certain sound that happens every time Netflix is loading. HBO does the same thing with Max, right? You see the same thing with your nightly news. It has like a certain sound effect that goes off. And when that sound effect goes off, you have a certain feeling within you. Maybe you're not present to it, but it does evoke certain situational, emotional feelings. This is the power of anchoring. Now, this is happening to you 24/7, whether you know it or not, right? You may remember the sound of "you've got mail," right, with AOL, and it would kind of evoke a certain feeling, right? A novelty, maybe. Maybe it was a sense of eagerness or excitement. What's in the mail, right? So there's certain things that are linked in our mind that we don't even know about to certain emotional states. Now, addiction in particular, what you want to remember is that you want to break the root of the addiction if that's what you're trying to do. Now, so for example, I got exposed to pornography at a very young age, and it slanted my view of sex, intimacy, relationships. Now, the thing also is when you engage in watching this, it keeps you in a perpetual state of instant gratification. You're not looking at meeting people, building relationships, creating intimacy. You're not looking at rapport. You're not looking at any of that. You're just looking at sex, 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 sex. And it creates this false paradigm of the world. So it took me a long time to break that. And even today, I have to be very mindful of the environments I go around, the people that I interact with, sounds, certain environments, like certain clubs, right? Strip clubs are a definite no-no. Certain movies, television, right? Game of Thrones, for most people, this doesn't activate things. For me, it's like I have to be very mindful of what I'm watching. I cannot watch certain things because it can activate certain things. So you want to be very mindful of the stimulus that is evoking a specific response. If you want to break the conditioning, you need to chart out for yourself. You need to journal what is the stimulus and what is the response. Now, that's a very layman understanding of how addiction works. Now, I'm going to break it down further. Now, this comes from Atomic Habits. You might also see this in the book, The Power of Habit. Those are great books if you're trying to learn the psychology behind addiction. Now, the one thing you want to know is they break it down into 4 categories. They break it down into cue, routine, craving, reward. Cue, routine, craving, reward. Cue, routine, craving, reward. So I'm going to give you some examples of what that looks like, right? So maybe it's smoking cigarettes, right? So maybe the cue, which is an external stimulus, right? A cue in the environment, there's a cue introduced, you see a pack of cigarettes. So the routine that you go to is smoking a pack of cigarettes. The craving that gets resolved is the craving for nicotine. But for other people, it might be something else. For some people, they associate cigarettes with socialization because they're taking a cigarette break, right? They're going outside, talking with people. I've worked with certain folks who had trouble with breaking this addiction purely on the basis that they associated cigarettes with socialization and socializing with others. So the reward is brain stimulation. The reward is feeling social, right? For other people, maybe their phone is vibrating. That's the cue. Now the routine is, I need to see what's new. So they're looking for opening their email. They're looking for opening Facebook, checking that notification. The craving is for distraction. Maybe it's boredom, right? And the reward is a momentary distraction being satisfied. Now, with each of these, you have to understand this is rewiring your dopamine circuitry. If you don't take responsibility for these addictions and you don't choose which ones you're going to break, it can wreak havoc on your life later down the line for health, relationships, for spirituality. It can wreak havoc on your body. So you want to really take ownership. Finances, right? Sometimes we have addictions to spending. Maybe we see a notification on the Amazon app and it's telling us lightning deal. And then we think like, I need to get this deal. This is a great deal. Let me go buy it now. And then we buy it and we feel a sense of happiness that we saved some money on this great deal. We got a great deal. This thing that was $100, I got it for $42. Look at me now, right? These are the types of addictions you want to take notice of, and you want to break them down when you're journaling. Break them down into cue, the routine, the craving, and the reward. You want to see what that is, right? For some people, so they might have a more positive type of addiction, right? So there's maladaptive and there's also beneficial ones as well. So for example, maybe you see your running shoes and it causes you to have a craving for that runner's high, right? That endorphin rush. And so what you want to do is the routine that you have is running and you start jogging. And then the reward is you feel a sense of accomplishment. Maybe you're out of breath, but you know that you earned that endorphin rush. So there are certain addictions that you can install. Now, there's other ones too that you want to be mindful of. Certain people have certain things that get triggered around cleaning, right? So this is one that kind of happens to me on and off every now and then. So for example, you might see clutter. And then what happens is you have a craving to resolve the clutter. You have a craving to bring order to the chaos. And then the routine is we're going to clean and clean and clean and clean. And by the end, the reward will be something that looks fresh, looks clean, looks spotless, it smells good. And that's the reward, right? So cue, craving, routine, reward. You want to really break this down. Now, the other thing you want to understand is that certain types of addictions, if you're not careful, they can lead to deeper and deeper addictions, right? So I warn people about pornography because yes, it's something that seems very innocent, right? Maybe as a child, I didn't know what I was doing and I was discovering and I was curious, but it could lead to vacuous, empty sex. It can lead to relationships without intimacy. It can lead to self-loathing if you're not careful. It can lead to depression. It can also lead you to going to darker environments, strip clubs, raves, environments where there's lots of drugs and sex associated, right? You want to be responsible for the addictions that you have, and you want to make sure that they are uplifting and benefiting you and the people around you. You don't want to be causing harm to you or your own environment. If it causes you maladaptive thinking, if it causes you pain, if it causes you suffering, you have to be mindful of that. Remember, when you go through a lot of these brain studies and what it looks like for people with drug addiction, when it looks like for people who have these cutting addictions, right? You see that they get dopamine hits from all of this, and it can cause the dopamine in your brain to just completely erode. Now, in order to break this, you need to be very, very mindful of what is the root cause. What are the cues that are going off in the environment? What are the cravings that I'm experiencing? What are the routines that I need to install to replace them? And what are the rewards I want to feel, right? So if you want to feel shame and guilt, yeah, by all means, do all these negative routines, right? Maybe they're maladaptive. If you want to feel positive and healthy about it, focus on the ones that will help you. So when I was studying hypnotherapy, they showed us this study about mice. And in this study with mice, you had a mouse in an environment. And in their environment, they had a bottle of water, which was clean, and they had a bottle of water which was laced with certain drugs. I believe it was heroin. And then what ended up happening was the mouse would go to the water and drink. And then the mouse would eventually stumble upon the water with heroin. And then when it went to the the water with heroin, it caused an addiction. And then afterwards, every other time, the mouse would be introduced to this environment with one bottle of water with water, and then one bottle of water laced with heroin, and the mouse would always go to the one with heroin. So where am I going with this? So this is how addiction looks, right? Before you know it, we like to do the thing that makes us feel good. It makes us feel less pain. It makes us numb out. It makes us escape from the realities, right? So what they did next as part of this experiment was they allowed this mouse to now have access to multiple other mice of the opposite gender. And they had many different activities, different types of food, different types of hamster wheels and things like that. And then they also introduced back again the water that was clean and then the water that was laced with heroin. Now, what was interesting about the second time around was that the mouse now had access to other mice of the opposite gender. And because of that, they were not tempted to go after the water with the heroin. Now, I know that sounds very counterintuitive, but follow with me. There is a lesson in all this. So what ended up happening was the mouse that was previously addicted to the water-laced, the heroin-laced water would now end up, having relations with these other mice, but it would be more healthy. And they would also engage with eating certain foods, playing certain games. Now, it was able to overcome the previous addiction. So what is the lesson and the takeaway here? The lesson and the takeaway here is that what we really crave behind all these addictions, underneath all these addictions, is connection. We're really craving connection. And when we feel disconnected, when we feel that we don't have someone to connect with, these feelings of loneliness, these feelings of pain, these feelings of sorrow, these feelings of maladaptive emotions, they set in. And when they become so overpowering, this is what triggers that cue, that craving, the response, and the reward cycle. Cue, craving, response, reward cycle. So, for example, if you are very, very lonely and there's nobody around, and you know that there's a website on there and it's a dirty website, and if I just go on there, I can see sex right away, instantly, and I can feel better about the situation, and it can make my feelings of loneliness go away. And if I do that and I get a hit of dopamine off of it, I'm going to get a reward of feeling a dopamine rush. I'm going to get that reward of what that feels like to have an orgasm without doing the work for it. Does this make sense? This is instant gratification at work, and this is why this is maladaptive. Because when you activate certain reward circuitry without earning it, you haven't actually done anything for accomplishment. It's a fake sense of accomplishment. That 0 to 100 it sounds very good, but you are actually doing more damage than you are doing justice. And I promise you, if you open those reward circuitries with the wrong intentions in mind, you can go down deeper tunnels. Most people who have porn addictions, they tell you that they go down deeper tunnels of porn. They start going into more fetish porn. They start going into child porn. They start going into other types of drugs, activities, things like that, right? Because you're burning away the dopamine. The old stimulus response model is not giving you the same dopamine fix that it used to. And so now you have to up the ante, right? So you want to be responsible for your cue, your craving, your response, and your reward. Now, there's a quote I'm going to share here, and this is very true. In order to break a habit, you must replace a habit. In order to break a habit, you must replace a habit. So what does this mean in the instance of pornography? Well, in the instance of pornography, what is the habit? The habit is really around instant gratification. It's around escape. It's around not feeling lonely. It's around not feeling pain, right? And in order to replace that habit, you have to do the opposite. You have to build intimacy. You have to build relationship. You have to do the hard things to build connection. When you do that, you're not going to feel those same cravings around instant gratification sex. When you do the same things around drugs, right? Some certain drugs, they make you feel good. Maybe they make you feel relaxed and calm and chill. Well, instead of giving the power to a certain drug, you can also replace that habit. Some people do meditation instead. Some people do certain types of exercise. Some people, they like to do cold plunges, right? Other people, they have gambling addictions, right? Instead of doing the hard work to really understanding the psychology between investing, risk to reward, risk management, trade psychology, they want to just win big and go big and go home, right? Go all in. These are all instant gratification forms of gambling. This is not what real investing is all about. Real investing is understanding supply and demand. It's really about understanding risk to reward. It's really understanding probabilities. It's really trading conservatively. It's really about managing your risk, managing your emotions. So I share this with you because there are ways to break these addictions, and I hope this video is helping you get some insight of to how to break some of these addictions. Now, I'm going to share some practical things that helped me with breaking my own addictions, because for a long time I did suffer with this, and this was something that kind of kept me cloaked in shame. Now, shame and guilt are two of the paralyzing emotions you might notice. And when you feel shame and guilt, it does not allow you to be vulnerable. It does not allow you to be vocal. It does not allow you to break your addictions. If you share it with somebody, you risk fear of judgment, right? But shame and guilt will never allow you to be accountable to somebody. And the way to break these things is you need to have somebody you're accountable to. I worked with many people who had overcome this. I had worked with many people who were going to be my accountability partners, willing to mentor me, coach me through this, right? Now, one of the things you want to look at, whether it's pornography addiction, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, whatever it is, you have to understand what are the associations that are going off in my mind, right? So for some people, alcohol is about socializing. For some people, alcohol is about escape. They just want to stop feeling pain, right? I know, like, having been to happy hours, I know exactly what that's like, right? You just feel so stressed, so tired of all the work that you went through for the last 5 days, and yeah, time to unload at happy hour, right? Let loose, right? Pay attention to the words that we're using around these scenarios. Now, what you also want to look at is what's behind this and what are the payoffs and what are the costs, right? So in the instance of pornography, what does the human brain look like once it's burned through all its dopamine stores, right? I had to Google this. I went to a website called yourbrainonporn.com. I think it's yourbrainonporn.net. And it shows you brain scans of what your brain looks like when it's burned through all its dopamine, if you take this too far, right? I had to create a negative addiction. I had to create a negative association to this habit so that I could break it. If I don't have a negative association to this habit and it occurs like a good thing, I'm only going to continue it. Does this make sense? So with alcohol, with smoking, you want to create a negative association with the habit first, right? And once you create a negative association with it, what does it look like for somebody whose lungs have just been riddled with cigarette smoke for 70 years? What does that look like? For somebody who has alcoholism, what does it look like to be a highly functioning alcoholic and to not have alcohol in their system anymore? What happens to those endorphins? What happens to that dopamine? How does their brain chemistry look after a while? What is the impact to the liver? Really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what does the long-term impact look like. You want to get very clear of what's the long-term cost if I keep going down this path. You need to feel some level of pain in order around this habit so that you can break it. If you don't have enough pain around it, if you haven't had experiences where friends have had close encounters with a near death with certain types of addictions, it may not be painful enough, right? Maybe you've skirted by and you've gotten through all of your addictions just fine and you've been protected, so you don't really feel the pain or the association with it. For some people, they need to go through this to see what is it? What happens? So for me personally, I had to look at what does the brain look like if I become super addicted to this, what happens? Now, if I break it, what happens? What happens to the brain then? How long does it take to recover? It was about, from my research, it took about 90 days, right? And then it also said, and so I was also looking at what does it look like for people in relationships who struggle with this versus people who don't have this problem? What does it look like? How does it make you more needy in relationships? Does it make you more needy or more codependent? What happens there? And then also, what happens to intimacy when you're so hooked on pornography? Well, it's practically not there, guys. Like, it's very clear. Now, when you're looking at this, you want to look at the long-term cost. You want to look at what is the long-term cost. You need to really associate some pain to it. Otherwise, your motivation may not be strong enough to break on its own. If you want to quit smoking, you have to really understand what are the pain points of smoking long-term. If I'm becoming a pothead and I'm just overdoing the pot, what happens to my ability to cognitively function? If I'm doing cocaine all the time, what is the ability to have and foster healthy relationships over time? If I am addicted to gambling, what is the likelihood that my wife is going to leave me if I gamble the house, right? Bet the whole house on it, right? What is the likelihood of these things, right? You have to look at the long-term cost. And if that does not cause you pain, it's going to be hard to move away from an addiction purely based off of pleasure or happiness motivation on its own. Now, what you also want to look at is what is the advantage of this habit, right? What is the advantage of this habit? So for me, what I had to look at is what was the advantage that pornography was giving me for a long time. Every time I would compare myself to others who are in healthy relationships, well, it gave me an easy way to escape, right? Anytime I was third wheeling with a couple or like a friend and his wife or a friend and her husband, well, it gave me a way to, like feel like, it's no big deal. Like they might have their stuff figured out. I don't need to have my stuff figured out. I can just, escape into this fantasy reality, right? Anytime I felt lonely, it would allow me to escape into fantasy world. Anytime I felt needy, it would allow me to escape into fantasy world. Anytime I was bored, it would allow me to escape into fantasy world. Anytime I was feeling deep-seated rejection, failure, sorrow, or wanted to dissociate, it would allow me to escape into fantasy world. Now, this is one that maybe people don't talk about, but anytime I felt physical pain, maybe I had an injury and like I injured a shoulder, a back, a knee, this would be pain relief. So you want to be careful of what linkages are going off in the mind, right? Maybe I was fresh out of a surgery and this would be the only thing that kind of made the pain go away, right? Be careful of what linkages get activated in the mind because those are called anchors, right? And some of them you have control over, some of them you have none, right? So you want to be responsible for your own cycle, the cue, craving, routine, reward cycle. You want to be very mindful of what that is. You want to look at what are the pain points that I can create around this habit so that I don't feel good about it, right? And you also want to, I'm going to talk about how to kind of safeguard yourself. What you do want to do is what I call active emotional management and processing. So you want to be journaling regularly. You want to get your thoughts onto paper, right? Sometimes I keep an e-journal, but sometimes putting pen to paper, this helps process a lot of what's hidden in the mind to get it out, right? Maybe I am feeling lonely. Maybe I am feeling depressed. Maybe I am feeling sad. Maybe I am feeling sorrow. Maybe I am feeling guilt or shame. I need to get it out on paper so it no longer has mental shackles over me. Number two, talking with a accountability partner, talking with a friend who's been going through something similar, talking with somebody who has overcome this. There is power in working with people that have already gone the journey. Number three, emotional processing with a coach or counselor. I can't help but stress this enough. You want to process through your emotions regularly. Maybe you're doing tapping, right? Maybe you're doing release technique where you're just releasing your emotions. Maybe you are doing some sort of processing on the emotions. Some people do conversational hypnotherapy. That's a really powerful one. I highly recommend it for people who are, afraid of going into trance. Hypnosis works wonderful at processing emotions, and you're all using imagery and visualization to your advantage of impacting the subconscious. Another one is through exercise. and physicality inducing exercise. So high intensity interval training, running, lifting weights, all of this is releasing trapped emotions that are stored within the body. You might feel aches and pains, you might feel out of breath, but that is you flushing out the negative emotions and the negative thought forms. Now, when you go through this, again, I mentioned what is the long-term cost. You want to look at what is the payoff. What am I getting out of this? Am I getting to lie to myself that everything's okay? Am I getting to lie to myself that I don't need to take responsibility for my relationships? Am I getting to am I going to let myself off the hook of having to go out into the dating scene? Am I letting myself off the hook with my financial problems and I'm just, revenge spending? Like, oh, I'm so mad I didn't make the money that I wanted this week. Oh well, you know what? I'm gonna just blow it on cigarettes and alcohol today, or I'm just gonna burn it on a very nice meal on Uber Eats, or I'm gonna burn it on something I want to see on Amazon. You have to take responsibility for what your emotional drivers are. For some people, it is revenge. They do not like their situation and they want to feel like they're in control. So they take revenge against their situation and they spend, they gamble, they drink, they drive, they do things that normally they would not be doing had they been in a state of abundance. So what other things can you do? You can fill your emotional cup. You can fill your emotional cup. So I talk about this idea and this concept of filling your emotional cup. This is all about self-care. This is about self-love. These are the things that you can do to help yourself fill your love bank. So for some people, it's a daily practice of forgiveness. So I make a practice every day. I forgive myself of all the things that I've been beating myself up over or beating myself about. Maybe I did something that was not in integrity with my standards. Maybe I let somebody down. Maybe I made a promise and I didn't fulfill on it. I forgive myself for all of those things daily. I write those things down that I've not been forgiving myself for, and I consciously make an effort to release myself of all guilt, of all shame, of all pain, of all suffering. I forgive myself of that. Then if there's parts of myself that I'm rejecting, I embrace and I show love to those parts that are feeling neglected and hurt. Maybe I'm going through loss and I just need to embrace my humanity for a minute. That's a powerful exchange. And a lot of people don't really teach that, but sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes it's great to look in the mirror, make eye contact with yourself, and just hold it for 5 to 10 minutes and just think with the intention of giving yourself love, giving love to the person on the other side of the mirror. This is a way that you can fill your cup emotionally. When you do this, you are actually shifting your self-image. You're shifting your self-esteem. You are now taking responsibility for your cup emotionally. You are filling it up. Another thing you can do is, hold that deep eye contact for 10 minutes straight. Another thing you can do is you can tap on your finger points. Now, these are acupressure points, the sides of the fingers, right? So really the ring finger is the only one that gets avoided here, but all of this has to do with love and forgiveness. So if I just tap on this and I just say, like, I forgive myself deeply and completely for this thing. I forgive myself deeply and completely for letting down this friend. I deeply and completely forgive myself for letting myself down. I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept myself. I deeply and completely forgive myself for this thing. I deeply and completely embrace the totality of who I am. I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept myself. I completely accept and appreciate myself as I am and as I'm not. I deeply and completely value myself, honor myself, accept myself, believe in myself, and trust in myself. I deeply and completely believe, honor, and trust and value myself. I deeply and completely appreciate myself. I deeply and completely show my own value to myself and allow myself to feel valued, right? So I just tap on those 4 fingers, right? You skip the ring finger, but you tap on the inside, right? And this works with either hand, right? If you just do this for 5-10 minutes, you will start to feel a buzzing in your hand. You will start to feel some of those emotions starting to get processed and flushed, right? You can also place your awareness on your heart. This is one that I do. I place my awareness on my heart. Sometimes I put my hand on my heart and I just breathe for a few minutes, and whatever I'm feeling, I just feel into that. So let's say I'm feeling sorrow. I just feel that sorrow, and I just, I place my awareness on my heart, and I just place my awareness on it, and I just feel it, and I just breathe deeply. Hold it and breathe out. Usually it's 4 seconds in, 8 seconds hold, and then 4 seconds out. And I just do that a couple of times, and you will start to feel that emotion is getting lighter and lighter. So let's say I'm going through, so loss has been a big one for me this last week. I've been experiencing loss, and I've been noticing environmental triggers, awakening feelings of loss, right? Memories of loved ones that I've lost, right? So I will just, focus my heart, and then I will just focus on the person that I'm feeling, saddened about, like that loss, right? Just feeling the sorrow, feeling the sadness, feeling the experience that I'm not going to ever get to talk to them again, not going to ever get to speak to them again, not going to ever get to say how I feel about them, right? And just feeling those emotions, all that pain, all that suffering, right? And just feeling that awareness on my heart, right? And if you need to put your hands on your heart, that helps you feel it or makes yourself aware of it, do that. And then just breathe. And breathe out. And you'll notice that more stillness comes to you. You'll notice that awareness comes back to you. You'll feel the feeling of release. And you want to take conscious effort to do this. So going back to the analogy of the mice, remember the way that they break their addictions, their maladaptive addictions, was that they built it through feeling love, feeling connection, feeling intimacy. So if you are not feeling loved, if you are not feeling connection, if you are not feeling intimacy, I encourage you to write down, journal for yourself, what's one small thing I can do to enhance my ability to feel loved, to feel connection, to feel intimacy. The more you are able to foster this, the more you are able to grow in this, the more you are able to break maladaptive, destructive patterns, habits, cycles. So again, I know this is a touchy subject for a lot of people. I've only seen value from breaking this addiction. I no longer frequent certain environments. I no longer hang around certain friends that were bad for me. I no longer have dangerous encounters with certain people. I no longer am consumed by thoughts that are all focused around instant gratification sex. I am able to build intimacy with people. I'm able to value people for who they are and who they're not. I'm able to build relationships with people. It also heightens your intuition. Now, this might be starting to get into the metaphysical or the spiritual side of things. So, if this does not jibe well with your religious views, you don't have to come at me at this. But there are certain books that talk about this. But when you are no longer spilling your sex energy, right? They talk about this in Napoleon Hill with sex transmutation. You are able to harness your fullness of who you are towards and focus it towards your goals, your aspirations, and you are able to be a dynamo for your work life. You're able to be a dynamo for the people that count on you. So I encourage you, like especially men, I encourage you to stop spilling your seed, right? To use that as energy towards your goals, your aspirations, your loved ones, for the people that matter in your life. Don't just waste it. Don't just let it go. Don't just spill it off to the wayside. Don't frequent these types of content, right? There's a lot of content out there that's hypersexualized, and it will desensitize your ability to feel. It will desensitize your ability to connect with people. It will desensitize your ability to harness intuition. It will allow you to be more manipulated by lusts of the flesh. It will allow you to be more manipulated by, drugs, alcohol, things like that, right? So, men especially, I encourage you to really do not be run by your vices, but you must manage and overcome your vices. I hope this video has been a blessing to you, and I will see you again in another video. Please give me some feedback if you like this content. Thanks. Cheers.